Objectives and key results are a collaborative goal-setting framework that helps organizations define and track ambitious goals with measurable outcomes. This methodology connects strategic objectives to concrete actions, enabling teams to turn organizational vision into quantifiable results. For organizations, leadership is about results. They were hired to produce. Leaders establish the tone and work culture of an organization. Not only do they develop and implement policies and procedures, but they provide purpose, direction, and motivation to the workforce to achieve organizational goals. Results-based leadership helps establish an environment for long-term success and productivity. Objectives and Key Results, or OKRs, is a system that was developed by the Intel Corporation that gained popularity by organizations to guide improvement processes and growth. It offers a systematic approach that allows an entity to organize strategies and goals over a specific amount of time and evaluate processes along the way to determine progress towards achieving them. In order for an organization to meet its goals, there must be a roadmap to get there. These are objectives. Objective setting can be characterized as identifying and defining the specific results desired. No matter what the objectives are, reduce costs, increase productivity, gain a larger market share, etc., leaders are vital in helping set and meeting them. Without objectives, a business will not have any specific actions guiding it to achieve its goals. Generally, organizations have strategic, tactical, and operational goals. Strategic goals are long-term and concentrate on broad general issues. Tactical goals work to plot the path towards achieving the strategic goals. Operational goals are usually short-term and focus on the physical efforts to work towards the strategic goals. Long-term business goals relate to the central vision management has for the future of the business. They look far off into the future and imagine what the organization can become. Comparatively, short-term goals are the things that can be done now and in the near future to inch closer to the long-term vision. Here are some components of long and short-term goals. The short-term goals are actionable. They must be able to be carried out. Realistic but challenging. They should not be too easy to accomplish, but they should not be so far-reaching that you cannot achieve them. And measurable. The progress towards attaining the goal should be able to be tracked in some form. And the long-term goals include are vision-based. They should be lofty and far-reaching to give you something to achieve. Concern impact, not necessarily specific action. Specific actions generally relate to short-term goals because they are the building blocks to achieve the long-term ones. Align with the organizational values. And should be measurable, so you know when you accomplish them. If you cannot tell when you get there, the goal was poorly written. Prior to setting or updating organization goals, it is beneficial to complete a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, or SWOT analysis. This helps define the state of the company. Essentially, it helps gain a realistic understanding of who and where you are as an organization. The more honest you are during the process, the more valuable it will be. SWOT should focus on the organization's financial position, internal conditions, external factors, and growth potential. The financial status is important because it determines the fiscal viability of company objectives. It would not make sense to set objectives that the organization does not have the available capital and ability to fund. Internal conditions include available physical resources, human capital capabilities, current processes, financial resources, and other inherent organizational conditions. External factors take into consideration the state and future expectations of the marketplace, relationships with supplies, regulations, and demographics. Lastly, the other elements should provide insight into the growth potential for the organization. The results will provide a guide for the goal and objective setting processes. Here are some steps that can be used in completing a SWOT analysis. Determine the purpose and objective of the SWOT analysis. To get the most out of a SWOT analysis, the developer or team should have a question or objective in mind from the start. For example, the organization will complete a SWOT analysis to help them decide if they should introduce a new product or service, or change current processes. Research the business, industry, and market. Before beginning a SWOT analysis, the developer or team needs to do some research to understand the business, industry, and market. Get a range of perspectives by talking to the staff, business partners, and clients. Also, conduct some market research and find out about the competition. At this stage of the SWOT analysis, the list does not need to be definitive. Any ideas and thoughts are encouraged. The list will be prioritized later in the process. The first step is typically to list the business's strengths. The first step is to identify and list what is thought to be the business's strengths. Essentially answers what do you do well compared to internal and external factors? Examples could include strengths relating to employees' abilities, financial resources, business location, cost advantages, and competitiveness. Then list the business's weaknesses. List things in the business that are considered to be limitations or that put the business at a disadvantage to others. Weaknesses could include an absence of new products or clients, staff absenteeism, a lack of intellectual property, declining market share, and distance to market. It is important for an organization to address the weaknesses identified in your SWOT analysis. The list of weaknesses can indicate how the business has grown over time. When management reviews the SWOT analysis after a year, they may notice that the weaknesses have been resolved. While new weaknesses may be found, the fact that the old ones are gone is a sign of progress. Next, identify and list potential opportunities for the business. Think about the possible external opportunities for the business. These are not the same as the internal strengths and are not necessarily definite. An opportunity for one aspect of the business could be a threat to another. For example, the business may consider introducing a new product to keep up with consumer trends, but the competition may already have a similar product. Keep this in mind, but for the SWOT analysis, the same item should not be listed as both an opportunity and a threat. Opportunities could include new technology, training programs, partnerships, a diverse marketplace, and a change of government. And finally, list potential threats to the business. These are external factors that could be in danger or cause a problem for the business. Examples of threats could include rising unemployment, increasing competition, ease of entry into the marketplace, higher interest rates, and the uncertainty of global markets. Once the elements of the analysis are captured, it is time to establish priorities from the SWOT. When the team has completed the steps above, they will have 4 separate lists. Ideally, these lists can be displayed side by side so management can have an overall picture of how the business is running and what issues need to be addressed. They can then work out what issues are the most important and what can be dealt with later. There will be 4 different prioritized lists. This will be discussed in more detail in a little bit. Develop a strategy to operationalize the results of the SWOT analysis. Review the lists and ask, how can we use our strengths to take advantage of the opportunities identified? To use your strengths to capture opportunities, match your top internal abilities directly to external market openings. This connection forms a strength-opportunity strategy, helping you focus time and resources on actions where you hold a natural competitive edge. How can we use these strengths to overcome the threats identified? You can use your core strengths to block external threats by matching what you do best directly against market risks. This core practice in a SWOT analysis turns internal advantages into a shield. What do we need to do to overcome the identified weaknesses in order to take advantage of the opportunities? To bridge the gap between internal shortcomings and external goals, you must pair your SWOT analysis with a targeted action plan. This requires fixing critical internal gaps, using your core strengths as a shield, and building a flexible timeline to target high-potential market shifts before competitors do. And how will we minimize our weaknesses to overcome the identified threats? To minimize internal weaknesses and overcome external threats, you must create a defensive weaknesses threat strategy. This involves pairing your specific shortcomings with the risks they worsen and then building step-by-step action plans to fix the gaps before outside forces cause damage. Once you have answered these questions and finalized the lists, now the SWOT analysis can be used to develop strategies for achieving the business goals. One of the keys to effectively completing objectives is to ensure they are communicated to all levels of the organization. Communication is the process of transferring information so there is mutual understanding. Effective communication is critical in the objectives and key results process. For objectives to turn into results, they must be understood by the supporting cast. Effective leaders communicate effectively. Another important factor in communication is ensuring it is a two-way process. Things will be happening while working to achieve objectives, and your employees must be comfortable enough to be honest when things are not working. Instead of shying away, avoiding sources of conflict, leaders identify them early and take proactive steps them and bring about productive resolutions. Without adequate lines of communication, employees will be plagued with uncertainty or confusion. The tasks may go off in a different direction than was intended if they do not understand what they are supposed to do and why. The why sometimes is just as important as the what because as issues present themselves, the modifications will be geared to take into consideration the why. Every objective or key result will not have equal importance. The end state results will likely have varying priorities or significance. When employees understand the priorities, they can use their time more effectively to focus on those items that have higher value. An organization would be wise to utilize a systematic approach to applying a prioritization technique that is understood by all participants. One such method is the A-B-C system. The first step is to write down the organization's project or initiatives based on an analysis, such as from the SWOT analysis. They should be defined so that the participants and stakeholders can understand what the objective is. These are then broken down and assigned a letter code based on the priority level. The A will be given to those components that have the highest priority or will be done first, B's will be assigned to the medium or secondary objectives, and C's to the lowest importance initiatives. Additional letters, such as D, E, F, etc., can be implemented if they are useful. Then align them on into a chart. Color coding can make it easier to decipher the various priority levels. List each objective under the appropriate column. The list can be further broken down by taking each letter category and applying numbers. The highest priority in the A column would get a 1, the next 2, followed by 3, and so on. This would be applied to each priority category. Once the list is compiled, it must be communicated so everyone understands which items are more important and those which should be done only if time permits. When setting objectives, it is important to establish realistic expectations to ensure they are within the capabilities of the organization. One way to verify that is accomplished is to make sure the objectives are specific, meaningful, achievable, relevant, timely, or SMART goals. In recent years, SMART has been expanded to SMARTER by adding evaluate and readjust. SMARTER works for organizational objectives and personal goals. Here is an explanation of the elements. First, to be effective, your goals must be as specific as possible. You need to answer the who, what, why, when, where and how questions that will set the foundation for what you want to achieve. Think about specific steps that need to be taken, who will be completing the task and what the overall goal is. Any goal you set must be quantifiable with data that clearly shows the desired outcome has been achieved. Ensure the SMART goal you set mentions specific numbers, lengths of time, costs, and any other metrics and benchmarks that are easy to track. The last thing you want to do as a leader is set unattainable goals. By setting goals that are clearly out of reach, you risk upsetting team members and lowering team morale, which can lead to lower quality work, decreased productivity, and higher turnover rates. Ensure that the goals you set are reachable for yourself, team members, or the team at large. You want to do everything in your power to ensure everyone involved can taste success. Have a long think about why you are setting the goals you are. Ensure SMART goals align with the needs and wants of individuals, teams, and your organization. Don't fall into the trap of setting goals just for the sake of it. You have an opportunity to make long-lasting impacts on yourself, team members, and your organization if you set goals that everyone will benefit from. The last part of setting a SMART goal is to ensure you set a point in time when the task needs to be completed. Setting an end date helps keep team members on track and gives them something to aim for. When the completion deadline rolls around, you can assess and determine if the goal has been met or if more work is needed. As opposed to winging it and hoping that by the end of the process you have achieved your goals, continuously evaluate your goals all the way along the process. This can differ by person. Some people may want to evaluate the progress of their goal daily, some weekly and some bi-monthly. Whatever you prefer, make sure you are continuously evaluating your goals to help make sure you achieve them. This goal links very well with timely, in that you have a timeline-based approach to goal setting. Evaluating your goals will help you stay focused all the way along the process. And lastly, readjust. Ever been faced with a continuous problem in the workplace? Are you hitting the wall? Well, this step is here to help you. If you are facing a continuous problem with your goals, it's time to take a step back and readjust. Readjusting doesn't mean throwing away the goals and get new ones, it's a means to an end, a way of getting around your problems. Now that we have objectives to work towards, we need to discuss key results. Key results are the identifiers that demonstrate the process made towards achieving organizational objectives. As previously mentioned, the goals and objectives must be measured to evaluate progress. The key results should be specific and have identified values so their progress can be calculated. If the objectives are qualitative or cannot be measured, they are ineffective and should be either rewritten or revamped. Instead of having an objective of improving sales, it would be better to say improve sales of product XYZ by 10% during the next 6 months. The latter allows the organization to track progress during the designated time period. It also allows you to assign personnel to hold accountable and direct efforts specially designed to achieve those results. This benefits not only the organization in working towards its objectives but allows those assigned the specific tasks to clearly understand the expectations. Key results are often associated with key performance indicators or KPIs. A key performance indicator is a measurable value that shows how well a company or person reaches an important goal. Though they have some similarities, there is a difference. Key performance indicators measure ongoing operational health and performance, while objectives and key results are a goal-setting framework used to drive strategic change and growth. Think of a KPI as a car's dashboard gauge and an OKR as the destination and roadmap for a new trip. OKRs are set by everyone in the organization, from leadership down, and can be set individually or on a team basis, but should be aligned with the overall strategy. They are shared transparently and progress is reported on a regular basis, typically quarterly, and are often useful to track initiatives, which are actions or projects implemented to improve objective and key result performance. Here is an example of objectives and key results. Tapping back into the results of the previous SWOT analysis, here are some examples of OKRs. Objective A is to decrease production costs by 5%. Then we have to decide how we will achieve this goal, or the key results that when completed will support the objective. So for the example, key result A1 is to reduce equipment downtime. Key result A2 is to renegotiate with suppliers to reduce component pricing structure. And key result A3 is to redesign production floor to decrease movement through the production process. And here is another example. Objective B is to improve training of the workforce operators to reduce defects by 10%. This will be accomplished through key result B1. Identify top 5 causes of defects. Key result B2. Determine methods for improving operator effectiveness. And key result B3. Implement training initiatives by start of third quarter. At the conclusion of the first quarter, the management team pulls together the data to determine the progress in achieving the objectives. For Objective A, the goal is to decrease production costs by 5%. It was found that actual costs have been reduced by 1.25%. This was driven by key result A1 improved preventive maintenance process reduced downtime by 8%. Key result A2 renegotiated part costs have saved $50,000 thus far. And key result A3 redesign resulted in a reduction of staff involved in the process by 1. The 1.25% reduction means that 25% of the object was completed in the first quarter. If after the second quarter, you see a 3% cost reduction, then the objective was 60% completed. And so on. Setting goals and objectives is important to the success and longevity of an organization. To accomplish organizational objectives, however, you need to know how to set them. It is not as simple as saying, I want and expect it to happen. Objective setting is a process that starts with careful consideration of what you want to achieve and ends with a lot of hard work to actually do it. In between, there are some very well-defined steps that transcend the specifics of each goal. Knowing these steps will allow you to formulate objectives that you can accomplish. Some tips for setting objectives include: set objectives that motivate. Set objectives in writing. Make an action plan. Do not plan everything. And spot the bombs. When you set objectives for the organization, it is important that they motivate everyone involved. This means making sure that they are important to the stakeholders and that there is value in achieving them. If the workforce has little interest in the outcome, or they are irrelevant given the larger picture, then the chances of everyone putting in the work to make them happen are slim. Motivation is key to achieving goals. There must be a carrot hanging off the stick to drive people to want to achieve their assigned objectives. Set objectives that relate to the high priorities within the organization. Without this type of focus, you can end up with far too many objectives, leaving too little time to devote to each one. Objective achievement requires commitment, so to maximize the likelihood of success, you need to feel a sense of urgency and have an I must do this attitude. When you do not have this, you risk putting off what you need to do to make the objectives a reality. This in turn leaves everyone feeling disappointed and frustrated, both of which are demotivating. And the workforce can end up in a very destructive I can't do anything or be successful at anything frame of mind. The physical act of writing down an objective makes it real and tangible. No one has an excuse for forgetting about it. It will also be beneficial to post the objective somewhere for all to see. This will provide a constant reminder of what you are working towards. You can also distribute the objectives or provide a tracking mechanism to your employees to remind them of what is important. Commit to it. As you write, use the word will instead of would like to or might. For example, I will reduce my operating expenses by 10% this year. Do not say I would like to reduce my operating expenses by 10% this year. The first goal statement has power, and you can see yourself reducing expenses. There is a commitment when you say will. And that commitment can help motivate you to ensure you are successful. The use of would in the second example lacks passion and gives you an excuse if you get sidetracked. There is no commitment to achieve your objective. The next phase is to make an action plan. It is often said the first casualty in battle, or the workplace, is the plan. But without a plan, there is nothing to shift off of. This step is often missed in the process of objective setting. You get so focused on the outcome that you forget to plan all of the steps that are needed along the way. The plan should be as detailed as everyone involved needs it to be to successfully implement and complete the process. The various stakeholders in the action process should participate in the action plan development. This will ensure that the plan is sufficient to meet its purpose. The final plan should be written down and distributed to those personnel that will support its implementation. By writing out the individual steps and then crossing each one off as you complete it, you will realize that you are making progress towards your ultimate objective. This is especially important if your objective is big and demanding, or long-term. Tracking the progress will also motivate your employees when they see positive movement towards successful completion. Conversely, it is important to not overplan. Have you ever worked for a boss who spent so much time planning every tiny detail that there is no time to actually perform the job? They seem to have plans for absolutely everything. Quite often, even more details seem to go into the little things than the big ones. What do you think the outcome of this level of planning are? Too much time is spent on planning, which will impact your ability to execute the plan. There is no doubt that planning is important, but the execution phase is where the benefits will be realized. A good rule of thumb is to plan the most important 20%. Planning in significantly more detail may limit your options when the inevitable issues arise. Unless you are a startup organization, thorough plans should already exist for goals, objectives, and key result areas. Therefore, extensive planning should not be necessary. The plan for the new objectives and/or key results lists the main tasks necessary for successful completion. It is inevitable that issues will come up during the execution phase. During the planning phase, predictable problems should be identified so that courses of action can be developed to deal with them. After all, Murphy's Law will apply: anything that can go wrong, will go wrong. If you plan properly, you will have planned responses to those challenges. But without an effective strategy for dealing with those issues, then you will be continuously in reaction mode, which will take longer and/or cost more. In any response to a problem faced while working on your objectives, you will have to observe, orient, decide and act, referred to as the OODA loop. The more prepared you are to recognize and deal with the issues, the faster you will move through the OODA loop process, and the better the outcome will likely be. One way to prepare yourself is to have a consequence management plan. Consequence management is building in contingencies when operations go outside of the norm. It is determining what could go wrong and what will be needed or be done to address it. The more thought that is put into this process on the front end will save time and money on the back end. As a leader, it is your job to produce desirable results for your organization. Through setting goals and objectives to achieve those results and tracking the progress towards meeting, you will be more likely to succeed. By using proven practices like a SWOT analysis to determine the current state of the organization, the objective setting process will be more effective. It also increases the chances that you will set better objectives that are clearly defined and measurable. Once the objectives are set, make sure you communicate what they are, the plan, management's expectations, and the priorities. A systematic approach as the one presented will increase your chances of success. We hope you found this training video valuable. Please give us a like and click the subscribe button to access additional FSTG training videos.